This is Resequeled, where we reboot, rework, and reimagine movie franchises, not because we know better, but because good concepts shouldn't be limited to a few writers. I'm half ghost, half man whore, dead palate. With me are alcoholic alien Abysme and Reddit band reprobate slime beast. On this inaugural episode, we're pitching 3 movie concepts for the Ghostbusters franchise. After the controversial box office flop that was the 2016 female-centric reboot of Ghostbusters, the third film and the original timeline was booked for 2020, this time being co-written by the son of the original director, Jason Reitman? You can tell I'm a giant Ghostbusters fan because I know how to say it.
Jason Landis, yes, go ahead.
Yes. And it is reported that the story will focus on a single mother and her family. Many diehard Ghostbusters fans felt that the 2016 reboot didn't capture the qualities that the original films had, and generally didn't like the qualities that it did bring to the table. Jason says, "I want to make a movie that is for all the other fans. This is the next chapter in the original franchise." So this new film has to not only fill the shoes of a beloved franchise, but has to recoup from the losses of the divisive reboot. And in the name of a fun thought experiment, myself and my cohorts have written up 3 treatments for a new Ghostbusters movie. This could be a reboot, a sequel, a prequel, a side story, or even a parody. So let's get into that. Let's have a rap, guys, about how we can make our own Ghostbusters movies.
I would prefer not to.
Why'd you agree to do this?
When you said that we were doing something called Resequeled, I thought that we actually were going to participate in like that trash tag movement.
And what was
that? Trash tag is a... Oh shit, we're doing a cold open.
We said we wouldn't.
Trash tag is a hashtag on Twitter where people take selfies of themselves cleaning up trash. So yeah.
Ah, okay. That is going to be dated in a week.
Mm-hmm. Unlike me.
Well,
because I won't be dated ever.
Okay, stay focused. Stay focused. Can't cold open.
No.
Can't talk about the horrible existential dreads that we have. How about you start us off, Slime Beast? Tell us your idea for a Ghostbusters fan film.
All right, I will. Now,
you have the rights. You can do whatever you want.
This is basically going to be Ghostbusters 3. This is my Ghostbusters 3. Fuck Jeremy Reitman, Jason Reitman, Jack Reitman, whatever his name is. Fuck him. Hollywood socialist, communist, whatever he is. I don't want to hear his ideas.
Hollywood,
I have some good old-fashioned
Nazi.
Yeah, I have some good old-fashioned redneck down-home Bible Belt, sensibilities.
Alt-right Hillary supporter.
Yeah. So my Ghostbusters franchise, threequel trilogy film, is basically similar to Infinity War, if you can believe it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. In that, we're going to have a bunch of characters. We're going to have a bunch of action, and we're going to send the Ghostbusters trilogy off, the original 3 movies. We're going to send them off, and we're going to move on into Phase 2 of the Ghostbusters universe, or I guess Phase 3 if we count 2016. But so yeah, in my vision of Ghostbusters 3, Ghostbusters is a franchise company. It's, across America. There are all different Ghostbusters locations, like McDonald's or, Walmart.
Well, that makes sense, because it was kind of weird that they were located in I guess, Manhattan?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, something like that.
And so then they get, like, national attention, but it's still just, like, these 3 guys, then they hire a 5th person, so it's them, their secretary, and it's just 4 people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because in the second film, it starts out where everybody forgot about them because the Ghost Menace was over, and so they, are no longer the Ghostbusters, essentially. So we've already been down that path, so we're going to take the alternate version, we're going to go in the opposite direction and say that they're a world-famous national corporation at this point, because they've saved New York City twice. This is what they're due. Peter Venkman is the CEO of the company. Okay? played by Bill Murray. I don't know if you knew that. Winston is back. He's sort of like the drill sergeant, like the training, guy. He, trains all the new people how not to like aim their proton gun at their face when they're cleaning it. Stuff like that.
You could have a lot of fun like gags there of like
Yeah.
the new recruits and
Right.
the stupid hijinks they could get into.
Right. And Egon, unfortunately, the actor who played Egon, Harold, is it Ramis or Raimi? Because I always said Raimi, but somebody said it was Ramis. Okay. Unfortunately, he passed away. So in this story, we're not gonna do the thing that usually happens where they say the character passed away too. No, we're gonna give a happier ending to his character and say that he is actually out on an international space station during the events of this film, studying cosmic spiritual anomalies of like the old Lovecraftian gods out in space. So that's why he's not
nice.
here. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like that.
Now Ray, the fourth character, played by Dan Aykroyd. Again, I don't know if any of you knew that. He sort of has left the Ghostbusters. He's like no longer associated with them. Peter is the CEO. He's running this company. He's living the high life. And Ray basically was bought out of the company. He wanted to leave the Ghostbusters company because he felt like it was going in this corporate direction, this kind of soulless, direction, and also because of something called the Wilmington incident. Now, the Wilmington incident is a big national tragedy that occurred in Wilmington, Delaware, and involved the Ghostbusters in some way. But we don't really know what that is yet. We just know that something happened and a lot of people were killed. In some kind of thing like that. Now, it's not directly said because nobody ever really dies in Ghostbusters, so it's not like a bunch of people are dead, but you can sort of glean there was a big tragedy.
Okay.
And of course, you can throw in the side characters, like you could have Lewis as like a accountant for the company, in a cameo, and like Janine as like the head of public relations because she's like the worst person to put in charge of public relations, that type of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah. Now we get to the meat of the story. We're going to be drawing from like the SCP organization or RPC, but not PCP.
No.
The SCP organization, for anybody who's listening to this but hasn't, followed any of our other content, it's like a group fiction project where people pretend to be scientists and they write up documents about anomalous objects and things like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to have our own sort of SCP organization in the movie, not literally by name, but similar. And what?
Yeah, to interject, I wonder if the government would get involved in kind of like, man, there's all these problems. Maybe we need to like subsidize this in some way, kind of like they do with colleges and stuff like that. Like this is a institution we need.
Right. But the SCP scientists are basically, since you have to have it in New York City, you can't have a Ghostbusters film outside New York City unless it's in one of your two pitches, in which case I retract that. So the SCP-type scientists are in this bunker below New York City, in like this big lab-type place. Picture like the movie Resident Evil, where everybody was underground in this big complex. And what they're trying to do, similar to like the Large Hadron Collider type thing, they're trying to create spiritual energy. They're trying to generate it from nothing as sort of like a power source, as like a different, whatever they can glean from this knowledge. Maybe they'll create like the new atom bomb, but it'll be a ghost bomb. Who knows? But they're trying to create energy from nothing. So Ray hears about this. Ray being sort of like this, almost like he would look like a homeless guy out on the streets of New York eating like a sandwich, sitting underneath a statue of the Ghostbusters as nobody recognizes him, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And
is he actually like homeless,
no.
Or is he just, he got bought out, so I'm guessing he's pretty much independently wealthy at this point, but
right.
He just doesn't like show it.
He's like an eccentric,
Yeah.
He's down on his luck. He's kind of depressed because of the direction that his baby took.
Right. Mm-hmm. He has to see advertisements for the Ghostbusters that he's not in, that type of thing.
Okay.
In fact, you could open the whole movie with like a commercial for the new Ghostbusters. You expect the cast to walk up, but it's like 4 people you don't recognize, and they're like, "We're the Ghostbusters of Omaha," But
this isn't so much Avengers Infinity War. It's more Civil War.
That's true. Yeah, that is true.
I'm kind of feeling Men in Black 2 a little bit.
Why are you feeling Men in Black? Do you want to tell us something?
You are the only one who remembers Men in Black 2.
Oof. God.
Apparently.
You don't remember the excellent Vor scene toward the beginning of the film?
That's
I'm
the
sure
only
that was a
one I
thing.
remember.
I was like, I saw that when I was younger, and I was like, why would they include that? Now I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I understand.
Join us for episode 50 of Resequeled, where we
Yes.
tackle Men in Black 3.
That's right. Right after episode 49, where we finish our pitches for Ghostbusters 3.
True.
So basically, the scientists are trying to create spiritual energy. Ray hears about it. Ray tries to get through to them. Of course, he gets like arrested at the gate, held in like a security room, whatever. Tries to, stop these scientists because what they're doing is they're not creating energy from nothing. They're summoning a great amount of energy from somewhere. They don't even, realize that what they're doing is bringing a, spiritual entity to our realm. They're not generating it. So the scientists, of course, bring about this gigantic, like spiritual jellyfish anemone type creature with all the tentacles through all the different rooms and structures and openings in this big bunker. And the scientists themselves become sort of like brainwashed hive mind cultists serving this giant creature that they've brought about.
Cool.
And of course, go ahead.
So it's like Lovecraft.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very Lovecraftian monster.
Right.
And I think that's kind of the interesting thing about Ghostbusters is kind of like what kind of horror can you apply to it?
Right.
And its original one was kind of like this ancient horror, but not so much like the cosmic Lovecraftian thing.
Mm-hmm.
So taking it in that direction is like it's an easy pitch. It's a fun thing to transition to.
Right. I like to think so. But so of course Ray either escapes or they throw him out or however you want to have him leave this organization. He notifies Peter, talks to Winston. They sort of get to understand that this is sort of like a big problem because Ray at first can't really get their attention, but he says we're headed for another Wilmington incident. That's the level of destruction that's going to happen here. And so then they're like, oh, okay, very solemn, very grim. Okay, well, what are we going to do? So this creature feeds on other spirits. So what you have is a procession of ghosts and, just whatever spiritual energy filtering into New York City, filtering to this creature, which is consuming them and growing stronger. So it's like a cannibal ghost.
Okay.
So what they do is they, in order to combat this huge menace, because now New York is full of ghosts again, and it's got this gigantic creature stewing underneath it.
Some of the ghosts are just trying to escape and live a life away from this thing that's trying to eat them.
Maybe, yeah, sure. And so what they do is, this is the part that sort of I thought was Infinity War-ish. They bring in Ghostbusters teams from across the country, whoever's available.
Ooh.
So you have the Extreme Ghostbusters.
I like that.
You have the Ghostbusters from the various, spin-off video games. You can have, those characters if you feel they're warranted. You have, like, the Southern Redneck Ghostbusters, like an invention of this film. You have the Boston Ghostbusters. And
I like that.
you bring in the female Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
What happens
I like
is,
that.
what happens is Peter says, "Oh great, who invited the female Ghostbusters?" They pan over. It's Tina Fey, Jane Lynch, Wanda Sykes, and Emma Stone. Totally different team, and that's it. That's just like a little one-off joke. And they would never do it, but that's in my perfect vision. That would be like a little joke,
That's great.
Anyway, the ghosts are all coming in to be eaten. The teams, split up. You've got like a team. You could have like a team led by each member of the original film. You could have like Winston, sort of directing the Southern Ghostbusters. You could have Peter suiting back up and going with the Boston Ghostbusters to handle something else. So it's sort of like everybody splits out, has their own, little adventures, and you show like the combat and the snippets between them. I have ideas for what those would be, but to save on time, I'll skip those. What would happen is Ray captures Slimer and experiments on him. Because Ray has a theory that the way this creature is feeding is by drawing in spirits, based on like a magnetism sort of thing. Like, the wavelength of the energy attracts the ghosts, pulls them to it. So he experiments on Slimer and manages to alter his spectral frequency and, whatever hoodoo you want to make up. And Slimer suddenly is not being drawn to it. He's broken the spell. He's altered the frequency of his energy. Maybe you could even change Slimer's color and make him like yellow or red or something just to signify it visually, whatever.
Or Slimer like grows arms and legs to look like a human, but his head is still the Grimer head.
Somebody,
Oh god.
Slimer Grimer.
somebody draw Slimer, but with long, luxurious legs like those Kirby drawings.
Oh, dude, that already exists.
Yeah. So what happens is the Ghostbusters are basically trying to fight and contain all the ghosts so that they can't go to this creature to feed it. So they're basically like starving it out. So the SCP scientists, in their hive mind cultish behavior, start lining up in front of the creature's great big ol' stinking mouth, and they line up, and one by one they fall over, and their spirit comes up out of them and feeds the creature. With this last bit of energy, the creature is able to burst up from beneath New York City. Tentacles coming out of like subway stations, tentacles coming out of manhole covers. Its head coming out from like the center of it all. Like this, as I said, like a big anemone, sea creature kind of thing. The creature then begins like chanting in this like arcane language. Like some kind of backwards Latin bullshit. And these silhouettes, 4 silhouettes, start to materialize in front of the creature and in front of all the Ghostbusters who have gathered together to fight it. Who are these 4 silhouettes?
I would assume it's like the spiritual versions of the 4 main Ghostbusters,
It's the Wilmington Ghostbusters.
Oh.
From the Wilmington incident. It's 4...
which, I think I know what the Wilmington incident is. It's when Dan Aykroyd was testing his Crystal Skull vodka on people.
Right.
And, before the final product.
Right.
Yeah. That's why Ray's really distressed about it.
Exactly. He's vowed never to look at vodka or skulls or anything again. But yeah, you've got your basic undead Ghostbusters, sort of like the anti-Ghostbusters, and they're the Wilmington team. And you can have, Ray even deliver that line or something like, somebody would say, "Who the hell is that?" And Ray would be like, "Oh God, it's the Wilmington Ghostbusters," that type of thing. So they failed to starve the creature out. It was a good plan, but it didn't work. They're trying to fight the creature directly, but it's, resistant to their bullshit. It's not something you can just zap and trap. So Ray realizes, he doesn't have time to alter the frequency of all the ghosts that have been, are feeding it. So what he thinks is maybe he can feed it a poison pill. So using a proton pack, ghost poison, yeah. Using a proton pack, he wrangles Slimer, chucks Slimer down the creature's throat. Creature kind of, sputters a little bit, jiggles, projectile vomits ghosts in every direction. Just blah, just tons of ghosts. Because you always have to end with, be it Ghostbusters 1, Ghostbusters 2, everybody's got to get slimed or everybody's got to get marshmallowed, whatever. So in this, they're going to get, ghosts just spat out on them, in rapid succession. Creature, of course, barfs itself to death, kind of withers away into sort of like a husk of itself. Cut to the end, cut to the ending scenario. Peter is sort of rethinking his position, like sort of what he's given up in terms of a normal life. He sort of maybe hooks back up with Sigourney Weaver's character, whose name I can't remember at the moment. Dana, that's right. I kept wanting to say Zool, and I'm like, that's not her name. Well, they call me Zool. That's not my name. But yeah,
I think Zool would probably be better in bed.
That's true. But he sort of give like an end cap to all the different stories, and like Ray starts up a new company. He starts up a little business in a small, closed down palm reading shop in New York City. And he puts up a sign that says "The Real Ghostbusters."
Oh, so I've been thinking about that the whole time. Is like this is kind of the founder scenario of Ray Kroc buying
Hmm.
McDonald's and like kind of like taking it away from the original vision of
Right.
McDonald's. And so this is that exact thing.
Right. And that would basically be it. You could maybe throw in like a little comedic scene of like the Wilmington Ghostbusters are still around and they're about to light up like somebody who's dressed up as the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man handing out flyers. Different things like that, lead into like the sequel of "But It's Not Over Yet?" question mark after the end. But
And so
go ahead.
do we have an idea of like who the Wilmington Ghostbusters are? Because that kind of sounds like you're transitioning away from these guys, and now it's going to be like here we're going to have like the movie of what actually happens at the Wilmington incident and like how they come back and everything.
This is the thing, you could by the end of this, you could sort of gauge fan interest. You can gauge viewer interest and see, do we want to make a movie about the Boston Ghostbusters? Do we want to make a movie about the undead Wilmington Ghostbusters going around and zapping shit? Do we want to follow the extreme Ghostbusters? Who do we want to pass the torch to is the thing. Maybe we can just let fans sort of decide, if the internet lights up with a bunch of memes about the Southern Ghostbusters, maybe they want to put some money into that,
I would watch Redneck Ghostbusters. That would be great. And yeah, I mean, if that's as much as I don't like cinematic universes, that's I think a great idea because you could go West Coast versus East Coast, North versus South, just as, and get different regions hyped up for who's going to represent, their region of the Ghostbusters.
Right.
And have different flavors, different directing styles. So, like, although they are all in the same continuity, more or less, the movies feel different, and it feels like you're watching something new, even though it's based on the same story.
Right.
Well, that's the thing about cinematic universes is they always get bloated. It's just like we either have to have a one-off movie, or we need to have a million sequels, a million, cinematic universe. Instead, what you do is just scale it back and let it be like, all right, we're really going to invest hard into Ghostbusters and see some spin-offs and have some fun with it instead of, scheduling 12 Avatar sequels before one of them's been made.
Yeah, because I mean, it wouldn't necessarily be like you wouldn't log on to the internet one day and see, oh, here's the logos for the next 20 Ghostbusters films. 2019 Southern Ghostbusters, 2020 Boston Ghostbusters and Female Ghostbusters, it could just be more like audiences really responded to the Extreme Ghostbusters. Maybe we should make that the cast going forward for the next few films. Whatever. That type of thing. So yeah. Anyway, that's my pitch. It would just be called Ghostbusters 3. I don't have any subtitle for it or anything like that.
Well,
So,
I
yeah.
think that's a good send off. Is just like make this Ghostbusters 3, and then then the movie after that is Ghostbusters subtitle
Yeah.
in some way. That way, it's kind of like here we're finishing up the original trilogy. It's always been weird that it's two movies. We're just putting the cap on it.
Right.
And didn't they, at the end of Ghostbusters 2016, tease a cinematic universe or like something? I forget what it was called.
Did anybody here see Ghostbusters 2016 besides Abysme?
I didn't actually see it.
Oh.
I just
Nobody did. Nobody did.
but I was like reading reviews about it, and I remember like one of the first ones said, it was just giving kind of a breakdown and going, and then the end slate or something is a Ghostbusters. I forget like what the term is, but it implies either a cinematic universe or like more installments to follow. I might be misremembering, but so I think that's what they were trying to set up.
They kind of do that with a lot of movies now, though. Any property that they kind of say, hey, we're going to parlay this into something else, and then they don't actually deliver on those promises.
Like at the end of that new Rampage movie, the guy from Burger Time shows up. It's like, what the fuck?
I wasn't sure if you were joking or not, because I totally believe that would happen.
Yeah, these days, I would not put it past them.
And at some point in time, I would think that that's cool, but at this point in time, we're so exhausted by it. So yeah, I'm a fan of that concept.
Right,
Am
so
I
that's
going
the
next?
show.
Uh,
Am I going next, or is it Bisme?
I'm happy to go next.
Okay.
All right.
So my take on this is a I guess you could call it a side story, or I don't want to reboot it. I want it to be its own contained thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided to challenge myself and make an all-female Ghostbusters movie
Uh-huh.
because I don't think that it is like most ideas for media, they're not inherently bad. It's how they're executed and how they're marketed, and everything else you'd actually do physically with a movie that often can ruin them. So I decided to take that approach.
I think that when they announced, "Hey, we're making an all-females Ghostbusters," I think half the internet reacted just immediately of like, "I don't like that."
Mhm.
The other half was like, "Oh, cool." And then that other half that was like, "Oh, cool," saw the trailer.
Yeah.
I
think
will
most-
say... Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I will say that when I first heard that they were making an all-female Ghostbusters, my reaction was, well, there goes the original storyline. I mean, that was my only concern.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, yeah.
I hate to always bring it back to Annihilation, but that was a movie about mostly women.
It was pretty much female Ghostbusters.
Like in a lot of ways, it
Serious?
was. It was, and it's really fucking good. And it at no point ever like made that its selling point.
No.
So I kind of wanted to follow in that vein of I'm gonna make an all-female. I'm gonna pitch an all-female Ghostbusters movie, but if I was in charge of marketing, I would not sell it like that. I would just say, this is a new Ghostbusters film. So, branching off from that, my Ghostbusters title is Ghostbusters 1921. So I'm going to put it in the past during
Ooh.
the Roaring Twenties. It takes place in, where did I have this? Maryland.
Back when there was a Maryland.
Back when there was Maryland, before the oceans swallowed it all. Yeah, so it's in Annapolis, Maryland, which is not the capital, but one of the larger cities, and it's on the kind of set on the Chesapeake Bay on the edge. So in mine, it revolves around 4 women in Annapolis, and basically it's a fairly well-to-do town that starts getting terrorized by ghosts, and these 4 women are the only ones with the initiative or the skills to deal with it for various reasons.
The good old-fashioned spunk, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
them ladies, they got that smoke. Take that how you will. Basically, so the tagline is, terrorized and haunted by malicious spirits in the 1920s, 4 women combined their skills to investigate and free their community from peril and doom.
All right.
And so I wrote this like tagline, then characters, then synopsis. I don't know. I think I'm just going to go in that order. So essentially, the first one I have written is Nancy Tanner. She is a nurse that served in World War I in France, and then she came back to the States, and she has a lot of issues just because war is hell and horrific. She buries herself in work. She's afraid to deal with her PTSD because this is the 20s. A lot of mental illnesses were not documented or treated well, so she doesn't want to like admit herself to an asylum or anything. So she just like works constantly and tries to ignore the voices in her head. She's weathered. She's essentially a veteran. She's been through a lot of shit, so she's kind of the muscle of the group.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of like set mine up as like likes. So like, is she like a Venkman like or a Stance like or are you just like not going by that? These are 4 new characters.
Kind of yes and no. You'll kind of see where I'm going with it. So there are definitely beats that my script hits, are my treatment hits that are similar to the original Ghostbusters, but there are some deviations.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't know if you had this intention, but the minute you
Mm.
started describing the character, I immediately pictured a specific actress for that role.
Oh yeah, who?
Yeah, Brie Larson.
Mm.
What?
God.
No, I wouldn't think Brie Larson.
No.
Not nothing against Brie Larson as far as that, but yeah, no, not what I had in my head.
Oh, okay.
You weren't thinking of Breezy L?
Nah, no, sorry, Breezy. So, so that's the first one. Greta Shepard is a professor's assistant, and the professor works at the local university in electricity and magnetism. He's kind of like definitely a Tesla reference. He's not Tesla, but he is just kind of eccentric and brilliant, but he's very old. And so he needs an assistant and relies on Greta more and more. Greta herself was a school teacher, but wanted to kind of challenge herself more, and she felt stifled by that. So she fought really hard to get this assistant's position, and basically is learning a lot from the professor. So she's the tinkerer in this one. She is working with very very crude but very like kind of steampunky technology that comes into play. So
Nice.
that's her role. Constance Coleman, whose I guess business name is Madame Zenra. She's a psychic and a medium.
Aha.
So she's kind of famous in the more poorer parts of the city, but she's like also a confidant to a lot of the social elites. She's very, very good at what she does. She runs a very good business. She unfortunately, this is the 20s, so she's black, so she can't
Unfortunately.
well, it's unfortunate for her. She can't move up in society.
Right.
And so that comes in a lot. So the governor has her ear, or rather, she has the governor's ear. But
Yeah.
she still lives in the slums because that's just how fucking society was back then. And then lastly is Hilda Fitzsimmons, who owns a speakeasy. She is the ex-wife to a business tycoon who owns the major factory in the city. She divorced him because she wanted basically equal control of the company. She wanted to run it like a partnership, and he's just like, no, we can't do that. So she divorced him, took her portion of the estate, and owns a speakeasy. This is in the middle of Prohibition, so she's making bank. It's a very rough, dangerous job, but she's very, very adaptable to it. So those are our four characters, like our main characters,
All right.
essentially. And the story starts, it's 23, right? So 21. I think I meant 23. Anyway, so World War I's ended, America's changing, and in this small town of Annapolis, people just start disappearing on the streets at night. There's no bodies left. There's no, usually there's no bodies left. If they are, the police, like forensics wasn't great back then, but even then they can't tell how they're dying. There's no murder weapons. There's no fingerprints, nothing. So the police have started putting a curfew in place. And this is during Prohibition, so people are already don't do a lot at night because they don't want to get caught. So it gets so bad to a point that Hilda, the speakeasy owner, is losing business because people just don't want to go out at night. And she is the catalyst for, I got to figure out what the hell's going on. And then
So that's kind of like a really bizarre Venkman motivation of
Yeah.
we need to make money,
Right.
yeah.
but it doesn't start from let's bust ghosts. That's an interesting idea.
Yeah, so they don't know it's ghosts at first. They just know it's something that the police can't explain, and since the police can't explain it, they're just saying curfew until we can figure this shit out because we have no idea.
Can the curfew be enacted by Walter Peck? Not anybody, not an ancestor, not anything like that. Can it literally be Walter Peck? Like he's
Actual
just
Walter Peck.
indescribably immortal.
I am government regulation. I do not die.
Yeah, so she decides to she like kind of drums up business again and goes, "Hey, everybody, I know we're down, but I'm still open. Come on, let's not let this get us down." And then someone gets murdered, like almost in plain sight, in the alley behind the speakeasy, and people freak out. And then weird paranormal activity starts happening, and everyone like just runs the fuck out, and she has no idea what to do. So she decides to get in touch with Constance, who is the psychic, and be like, "Look, weird shit went down. I have no idea what it is. The police don't know. I don't know who to talk to. Can you like talk to ghosts or whatever? Because that's the only explanation I have left." And from there, we kind of get the first act of setting up the team. So they do a seance essentially, and a ghost essentially materializes, and it's very violent. It's very angry. They realize they can't do this alone. They don't even know how to like get rid of the ghosts or catch them or appease them or what. So they just start going around town thinking, who can help? Who has the time or the know-how to do this? And eventually they also meet up with Greta, who's always up for a challenge. She's like, "Yeah, okay, fine. I got weird equipment from the professor. Don't worry, he's pretty much out of it most of the time. He won't care that it's gone." And then they also bring along Nancy the nurse, because they need, who knows what's going to happen. If you get sliced open by a ghost, you're still sliced open. You're going to have to go to the hospital or something.
Plus,
so that's our core team.
You never know. She might be able to administer treatment to the ghost, bring it back to life.
True.
Yeah.
Paranormal resuscitation.
Yeah.
And so they eventually try to spark what happened to the speakeasy again a different night. She shuts it down. There's no guests there. Not that anyone would come anyway. But they do encounter another ghost, and they chase it out into the alleyway where the guy died recently, and they look up and they see just tons of ghosts coming down from the sky and then going into buildings and houses and parks. And they realize that this is so much bigger than they thought, but they know the police aren't around. The curfew's intact. The police are just kind of walking around going door to door. They can't possibly do this. So they realize it's up to them. And from there, they develop skills, they develop technology, and they eventually find out that these are Civil War spirits who, this is kind of, this has been done, but basically the factory was built over a Civil War graveyard that just, there was some dealings and, they didn't move the bodies, and it all culminates there at the factory in this giant electrical explosions and 1920s steampunk stuff. So that is the movie. It is slightly comedic in tone, but it's more dark and more serious than Ghostbusters, which is why I wouldn't call it like a reboot or anything. I would say it's just kind of a one-off chapter in the Ghostbusters universe.
So, do you know which side the ghosts were on? Because that, I would assume, since it's in Maryland, is that going to be Union soldier ghosts?
Yeah, it's Union.
So the Union soldier ghosts are evil. So you think the Union was wrong?
Not evil. They're just angry.
They arose and angry.
And angry.
Yeah. Yes.
So would
All
these
right.
ghosts? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just saying. Yeah, I like it.
Would these ghosts be like apparitions, like in Civil War uniforms, or would they be more like not surreal, but more like with different aesthetics, like just based on what type of person they were, or?
They wouldn't be noticeable at first. They would just be kind of horrific specters that don't really have. They have like a vaguely human form, kind of skeletal. And when as the team progresses through the plot and starts discovering more and more, they start to take on a more recognizable form. And that's done through like the psychic and through the technology. And eventually they realize, oh, these are soldiers. And then it kind of, that's the final push they have to solve the mystery and to have their confrontation, their final confrontation at the factory.
All right.
Well, you could do a lot of fun things with costume design for that, because the Ghostbusters design already kind of feels like it's from the 1920s.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
It already is kind of like this weird pseudoscience technology with like these plain beige outfits. So I think that like really works well. And
Yeah.
then that kind of gives you a theory of like, okay, well, where did they get the idea for the technology to begin with? And it turns out that they got it from these women, messing around with it in the 1920s, and they kind of like had more primitive abilities, and then as time passed, it kind of gets forgotten because you have a lower amount of paranormal activity. Then when it spikes again, these people kind of perfect the technology, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just picturing like when you said like the beige suits, I'm picturing like a 1920s, almost like maybe military surplus, since you have the military connection.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like they would, find surplus from, as they called them, the doughboys back then,
Right.
and just kind of like, yeah, retrofit those to be some amount of protection.
Right. You could have like, not that you would specifically do this specific thing, but like they had those baggy ass outfits with like the hazmat hoods, and different things like that, rather than like the sleek stuff we know of today. Not that you would put hoods on people and shit like that, but you could have, like you said, edited types of things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right, so that's Ghostbusters 1923.
21?
21.
1923. I think I changed it to 23
1942.
later. Yes.
Right during World War II. And Nazi ghosts.
Oh God.
Would they be immediate like Nazi ghosts that just died, or
Yes, immediate instant Nazi ghosts. Find them at your local Toys R Us.
We need to stop killing Nazis. Why? We're giving them ghost powers.
This was all part of the plan, you fools.
I mean, I don't want to step on DP's pitch. I think that's what it is, but
Yes.
Instant Nazi ghosts.
Well, it's funny that you say that because mine, I want to go to the direction of, Ghostbusters is a very beloved thing. When you look at a lot of these like 80s movies, there are a lot that have very like that have adult themes but aren't really adult movies. So they just have like, cursing and allusions to sex and stuff like that, but they're still movies that are loved by kids.
Are you gonna pitch a full penetration Ghostbusters movie?
The very opposite. So you look at like RoboCop and Ghostbusters and these kinds of things that have very adult things, but they're loved by kids. And then like kind of after the fact, it's like, I guess we got to make action figures for the kids of this like very adult movie. And so what I want to do is let's make a very corporate, entirely PG Ghostbusters.
Would this be animated or live action?
Live action.
Okay.
So very unlike me, but let's follow me here. Entirely PG movie. And even though I'm kind of the mind of I'm less of a reboot person and more of a let's make a sequel and that kind of thing. Let's do the thought experiment. Let's make it a complete reboot. New timeline entirely. No crass humor. And I think that I want to capture the spirit of the original movies, which isn't so much a jokes per second kind of setup, which I think the 2016 one was kind of going for, and make it more focused conceptually on jokes. Not like highbrow conceptual jokes or something, but like the jokes are related to the situations. You know what I mean?
So early Simpsons as opposed to late Simpsons.
Yeah, and also Ghostbusters, the original, versus Ghostbusters 2016. And for people saying, how can you criticize the movie, you haven't seen it, I've seen enough clips of it.
No. You have to sit down, you have to watch the entire thing, and only after the final credit has rolled are you allowed to have an opinion.
Yes.
No one is allowed to hate Transformers, because unless you've seen all 7 of them, how can you possibly know the quality of a Transformers movie from Michael Bay? How can you know?
I saw Transformers 1. Yeah, but it like wraps you don't know the arc of the story until you see Bumblebee with John Cena.
How many... this is sort of a divergence, and I don't want to take away from DP here. So I'll just pose this rhetorical question: do you think there's a single person alive who has seen all 7?
Yes.
Or is there just
Yes.
is there any overlap of that?
It's called China.
Oh,
It's
okay.
called China.
I see.
Yeah. Okay. So opening shot of the movie is a found footage of an abandoned library, and there's ectoplasm on the books and everything, and there's the flying note cards and the floating books, all of that kind of stuff that you see from the original opening with the lady, the librarian going through the library, and so we're seeing all of that, but it's from the perspective of a found footage camera holder, right?
Right.
And then the camera holder sees kind of a ghost and runs away. You just get a little bit of glimpse of it, just a little bit, and they run away. And then there's kind of like some heavy breathing, and then they pan the camera up. Ghost attacks the face, falls out the fuzz, kind of screamo, right? This
Okay.
Then there's a zoom out, and it shows that all of this film is being shown on a monitor. And you hear someone say, before you even see someone, you just hear, God, these little internet nerds are killing us. All we have are ADR creaks and groans. Where'd this come from anyway? And we're introduced to Peter Venkman. And it is Peter Venkman, but it's being played by a new actor, and it's a new character, but it's fulfilling the same role. I'm envisioning a thick Chicago accent, because Chicago accents are fun. No other reason. And he's one of the 2 hosts on a ghost hunter show, just like you would see, the Ghost Hunters International, all of these kind of shows where they investigate paranormal things. Most of the people, dirty industry secret, most of the people who make those shows know that they're faking ghosts phenomenon. Like, it's all nonsense, and they know what they're doing. They're staging these hoaxes, and that's what Peter Venkman does in this. He's a ghost hunter. He stages hoaxes, and they're fighting declining ratings because of the internet. The internet is making, they're not saying this, but it's making Marble Hornets and all of these cool independent horror things, and they're admitting that they're fake. And these people who are admitting that they're fake are just killing these people who are relying on their older, dying boomer audience, right?
Right.
So the other person that Peter Venkman is working with is Ray Stantz. Ray Stantz is spelled R-E-I, so it's a Japanese woman fulfilling the role of Peter Stantz.
DP, it's getting hard to take you seriously, but okay, go ahead.
So instead of having a full female cast, instead we're just going to do some women and have them have pronounced roles, instead of kind of like let's just do Ghostbusters but gender swapped, which kind of is what the feeling was for this one, for the 2016 reboot. Instead, let's make some of them women. That way, it doesn't feel like it's this weird pandery thing. So Ray Stantz is a discredited physicist who wrote about paranormal things and did this in peer-reviewed scientific magazines. Just so happened that these peer-reviewed scientific magazines weren't very well respected because they were kind of like conspiracy theorist, anti-vaxxer monthly magazines. And so
you said you said this is a female character, so the name is spelled R-E-Y? Was that what you said?
R-E-I.
Oh,
like,
okay. Okay. Continue.
Like the Japanese. And so, goddamn. So the idea is that they have tanked their reputation, and she got fired from the university she worked at, is just kind of blackballed. And she wrote these articles because she genuinely believes in the paranormal, but has been so thoroughly discredited that, everyone hates her. So the only living she can make is helping host this ghost hunter show where, they're staging these hoaxes. And it's like, to the average viewing audience, oh, there's some credibility because this person is a real scientist, but everyone else hates her.
Yeah.
So they have that scene. Next scene is an underground weapons laboratory where they're like firing lasers, and all of the people in charge are like, man, these tests keep failing. And we get Egon Spiegler, who is an Austrian scientist with like no social graces, like no sense of like personal space. Very much so, kind of like your Sherlock Holmes character, kind of like your L character from Death Note. Just very much so, doesn't care about other people, very antisocial, and is hated by his peers, but is well respected for his achievements in weapon science. He sees this experiment, quote unquote, failing, but realizes that there's something to it, and realizes that, oh wait, that article that I read, forever ago in like Anti-Vaxxer Monthly has
Yes.
merit to it. And so Egon realizes that he needs to take a trip to America to actually meet up with Ray Stantz to talk about, his findings. And then we're introduced to our next character, who is Winona instead of Winston. And so this woman is a social media mogul. It's like a goth chick who's into like seances and fashion and does this kind of stuff on Instagram. And you know how there's like those Instagram famous people?
Right.
She's someone like that. And, she's really into seances and fashion and, all of this kind of stuff, but gets called out for being fake. And so there's like this harassment campaign of everything she posts. They're saying, go investigate this video. And it's the video that they were talking about earlier that Peter Venkman and Stantz were talking about. And they're like, you need to go there if you're like a real, seance enthusiast, if you're into like real. Yes, I guess that's the term. And so you need to investigate this haunted library. And so everything she does, that's the immediate response. So she's like, fine, to prove my cred, I'll go there. But before she does, she notices that Venkman and Ray are also going to be going there. And so the four of them just kind of, meet up through this confluence of, let's investigate this thing. And so Venkman takes a camera, and they're going to this actual place where Egon is like, I'm going to test out these new weapons that I have and see if we can actually find Ghost and capture Ghost and get this proof. And in the process, what we get is they split up just like they do in the hotel in the original movie, where they're all going their separate ways. And it turns out that the footage is being made by Venkman. So Venkman is holding a camera, doesn't want anything to do with the electronics, and is just running off and getting attacked by the ghost. And we find Venkman on the floor, slimed, and with the camera, and somehow the footage got uploaded to the internet in the past.
Huh.
So there's like weird space-time distortion. So the footage that he was like, man, this is really creepy and way better than he actually accidentally made it. So now we're introduced to Dana Barrett and Louis Tully and those characters. It's kind of the same scene where Dana opens up the fridge, and you know how she sees this like, stairway to like this weird demonic world.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, she sees a forest, and she's, hearing voices in her head telling her to go into the forest, and she closes it. And from there on, the story kind of plays out the same way that it initially did, where it's, this, creepy supernatural force is welling up, and it's kind of becoming this end times thing. But instead, it kind of has a found footage coat of paint on top of all of it. So from there, I'm kind of like open to interpretation for where this could go. But I think you can kind of see how this plays out from there. Of let's just kind of update all of the old stuff and see how it would look in the 21st century.
Now, I feel like there's going to be some culmination or some further reference to this forest. Is it possible for Louis Tully to be played by Logan Paul? What?
Oh God!
No, don't you dare besmirch Louis Tully. He's got way more sense than that clown.
I think first of all, the idea of updating everything, I think, is great, because how we view ghosts in movies these days, um, they definitely have their trends, and I think they are a bit different than how people viewed them in the '80s, as much as we have '80s nostalgia now. But yeah, the Paranormal Activity movies, Ghost Adventures, shit like that. It's very like a chair moving is how we portray a ghost more often than, oh my god, an actual physical apparition.
Yeah.
So I like that. I like that spin on it.
I would think that shit like that actually is my favorite ghost hunting show. Because, like, a chair moves, and the guy gestures to it, and he goes, shit like that! You say? That's, like, his catchphrase.
The fuck is that? It's getting spoopy in here. But yeah, the general idea is, in my mind, is you look at the old Ghostbusters, and there's, like, this antiquated aspect of their ideas of ghost, and that's kind of, like, a very cute thing, because you don't see ghosts like that anymore in movies. It's all very serious, and there's obviously there's comedy in Ghostbusters, quite obviously, but they're kind of like aping off of very cheesy, kitschy movies. They're kind of making fun of those, and I think that now it'd be good to kind of make fun of the new style of Slender Man,
right.
Let's go wander in a forest, found footage kind of thing. Let's make fun of that instead of making fun of these old antiquated things. I think that's part of the thing that's weird about Ghostbusters 2016 as well, is like, let's talk about all of these things that were culturally relevant in the 80s instead of, talking about the stuff that's relevant now.
I think that it is interesting that when you talk about like the antiquated idea of ghosts and everything, this is sort of just like a sidetrack, side note thing.
Yeah.
What was always interesting to me is that the creators of the cartoon show, the Ghostbusters cartoon in the 80s, the original, they always contended that the ghosts weren't dead people. That the ghosts were actually just spiritual beings that exist, with or without humans. So I always thought that was kind of an interesting take on the whole thing, too. That's just sort of a side note, unrelated thing, but I figured it was worth mentioning.
It is related because that is the idea that a lot of these seance people have.
Yeah.
Like when you talk to specifically like the kind of like Catholic seance people, they believe that these are things that were never alive, and that they're, pure evil and that kind of thing. And that if they're telling you that they're like, oh, this dead person, that they're trying to deceive you.
Right. Actually, met a guy once when I was volunteering at a aquarium. He was another volunteer there, and he had this whole conversation with me, one-sided conversation about how everybody who said that they saw a ghost is a Satan worshiper because those are demons. It's like, people say that they saw their dead grandma, but that's a demon. I was like, oh, fucking hell. Jesus Christ.
And people do believe that, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's, to suggest that the otherworldly is anything other than a binary choice is heretical. So
there are actually 70 plus types of ghost. So
if you go to heaven, you get 72 types of ghosts.
just on a platter. So when you said that the rest of the story kind of pans out as sort of similar to the original, was that like the ending point of the pitch, or did you have more to say? Because I don't want to just steamroll over that.
No, it's kind of the ending point of the pitch.
Okay,
I think that from there you can kind of see how, with that setup, what direction it would go, where they, that kind of reinvigorates, Peter Venkman and Ray Stantz are able to leave their dying show behind, just like they left the university, because now they don't need this. They can, make a living off the internet with Winona being kind of like the social media mogul. No longer do you need. I always forget the name of the secretary, the like snotty secretary, Janine. Like, you don't need that character anymore because they already have their social media person on the team. You know what I mean? The person to take care of all of that stuff.
Yeah.
What if the social media site has an advanced AI algorithm called Janine, J-A the number 9?
But I also thought it was kind of weird in the original movie that it's three scientists and a black dude.
Hmm.
That it does kind of like, I don't want to say it's problematic, but it is kind of weird.
Now,
right?
are you
Like,
talking about the originals or the reboot?
the original? Well, yeah, they both.
They just
do
sort of
that,
kept
but,
that in there, didn't they?
yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
So it's like three, academics and then a black person. This kind of breaks away from that and also makes it to where half of the cast are very scientifically minded and half of the cast are, very spiritually aware.
Right.
Ray Stantz being spiritually aware, Winona being spiritually aware, Egon and Peter being more scientifically minded,
Yeah.
being skeptical and that kind of thing.
Right.
Agreed.
All right. So yeah, so that's Ghostbusters 3, Ghostbusters 1923, and
Ghostbusters PG.
Ghostbusters PG.
Ghostbusters rated PG.
Bring your kids.
Well, I don't know that I have a name for it, but it is just Ghostbusters found footage edition.
How about Ghostbusters 2.0, because it has the social media aspect. Ghostbusters.com. No.
Oh man.
R/Ghostbusters.
R/Ghostbusters. Oh.
Oh, can we... I don't want to alter your story, but I'm sorry I have to. Can we make it so that instead of a show, they're running a subreddit where nobody's allowed to question the ghost stories?
Yes. Yes.
Or a YouTube channel, and they're like not letting on that it's fake.
Oh, man.
This ghost says my inhaler is your son's touch.
And they have to fight the algorithm, and that's like their biggest antagonist. Is that they're constantly struggling for views.
Janine has become self-aware. She's blocking
She's
out.
demonetizing everything,
Yes.
and then we upload it.
Every time she finds a video that's offensive, a voice clip that says "We got one." So yeah.
But that makes Susan Wojcicki the EPA stand-in.
Yeah.
Comes in and shuts it down. Nope, can't have this. Sorry.
Abysme, I knew that exact joke would come up at some point during this recording.
Susan Peck.
I knew it.
Hey guys, if you liked this episode of Resequeled, then please write a comment below telling us how you would write a sequel or a prequel, a reboot or a spin-off of the property mentioned in this episode. And if you didn't enjoy it, well, why don't you just tell us how you would do it, since it's going to be so much better than what we thought of. We just might read yours in the next episode of Resequeled.